District of Conservation is sponsored by CFACT. To learn more about our sponsor, head over to cfact.org. Thank you so much for listening to the show.
Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of District of Conservation. I'm joined by my new friend Mallory from Montana, and we linked up a few months ago when I was there doing some reporting about bear conservation, and we've been social media connected for a while. We stay in touch, and I figured it'd be really cool to bring someone who has a unique background across media, digital media, and who loves doing hunting, especially in the Mountain West, to come on the podcast. And she listens to the show. So Mallory, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate the chance to talk about all these things that I love.
Exactly. How did you get roped into hunting? Because you're also from California, and I think people think those of us from California don't really have an interest in this, or we don't really care for it, or maybe we're opposed to it. How did you go from, living in California to getting to Montana? And you also have a unique background, having been a former local reporter too. So how does that all blend in well with your interest in the outdoors and conservation?
Yeah, it is quite a wild story. Really, I attribute all of my outdoor hunting experience to my husband, who I met in southern Minnesota on my first TV job. I just moved straight from California to southern Minnesota, had never been to Minnesota in my life. So that was just a complete shock for a California girl. Didn't know it could ever possibly be that cold that it hurt to breathe. And then the fact that they have tornadoes, I was just blown away. I was like, wait, we're next Canada, and you guys have tornadoes. This is crazy. So yeah, that's how I got into hunting with my husband. And it's really funny because it is a passion that now I've pursued through the many states where we have lived. We've also lived in Alaska before we came to Montana, and we've hunted in all of these states. Also, we had a hunting honeymoon in Hawaii, which was really fun, hunting in Hawaii. But it's cool too because I didn't know much about hunting until I met my husband. He introduced me to all of it, but I did know like a tiny bit that my dad hunted, but we never really talked about it because he didn't really hunt when I was growing up. But then once I started getting into hunting, he was telling me his stories hunting, and actually his grandpa used to drag him around hunting all the time when he was younger. And he actually kind of hated it because they were like the straight up outdoorsy sleep under the stars with a sleeping bag kind of hunting, like didn't even have a tent, and it was pretty rough. And, but it was just really fun for him to share those memories with me. So it's kind of this funny thing where I never knew I had it in me, but I guess I kind of did. And actually the antelope that I shot just this weekend was with my grandpa's gun. So a ton of the guns, when we got married, my dad handed down to me. So it's like it's a generational thing that I didn't even know that I had in me.
That's so sweet. I feel like a lot of people have that story, especially women, or maybe their mothers are starting to teach them. I know in fishing, now women are becoming more commonly the teachers in these activities, but hunting will be interesting to see. But typically it's usually your father or your spouse or boyfriend or someone like that who gets you roped in. But talk about your pronghorn hunt, because it looked really cool what you had obviously harvested. You involved your kids, and I saw you posting videos post-hunt processing, and they got so excited about handling the meat. So talk about that hunt and about pronghorn sheep, because pronghorn antelope, that's the more accurate term, because a lot of people have never really seen that before. I'm familiar with it because I have friends that hunt out west like you, and others who've told me about it. The speed goats, they're the fastest animal in North America. People don't know that, but they're beautiful, delicious, great to admire, and something unique, I guess, in terms of a species to kind of aspire for. So talk about that hunt and shooting with your grandpa's gun, as you said.
Yeah. No, I'd love to tell you about the hunt. I love sharing the stories too. So it was a really fun hunt. Literally just filled my tag 2 days ago, and we go way up on the high line to this area where there's just a ton of antelope. But like you mentioned, they're super fast, and they're pack animals, or pack herd, and so they have so many eyes looking in a million different directions. So it's really hard to sneak up on them because they see you and they just take off, and they run so fast, and they're just gone. So it's hard to sneak up on them, but we got really lucky this year and spotted just one. And then I got into a position, my husband dropped me off, and we were hunting with our kids, like you mentioned. So we're all out driving, looking for the antelope. And he dropped me off at a spot, like a low spot, so that our car couldn't be seen by the antelope. I get out, and he keeps driving, and he takes off. And so then I'm pretty much solo hunting at this point. I've got my gun. I hop out of the truck, and I get it all ready. And I kind of crawl over to this area, and I had to get at this point I had to go 100 yards or so, and I'm in a low spot, so they can't see me at all. I've got the hill between me, and I belly crawl up this hill so I can just barely peer over the edge through the tiniest bit of I don't know, 8-inch grass that I'm using to cover myself. So I'm laying completely flat. And I see that there's two more. And they were about 287 yards away, about 300 yards away, which is just a shot that I can take with that gun, but I don't like going that distance. So also I didn't like the direction that they were facing. So I made a plan to move to another spot, which is kind of tricky, especially because I'm just all by myself. And I'm like, okay, I don't know exactly where they're going to go next. But I came up with this plan to come down the hill and go to a different hill and put that between me so that they can't see me and I can't see them. I'm hoping when I get to the top of this hill that I'll be able to still see them. And I did it, and I closed the gap by about 100 yards or so. So when I glass them the next time, I belly crawl up this hill, and I'm just peering over the edge, and they were 170 yards away. And so I was just watching. It was two females, but I had a buck tag. So then when the buck came around the edge, I saw him, and I was just had buck fever so bad. So actually, I was shaken, and I wanted to get my gun steady. So I waited so long. And sometimes my husband and I joke that usually when he can see me, at this point he couldn't see me because they were so far away, and it had been a while. But he always gets annoyed because he's like, just take the shot. But I wait a really, really long time until I'm really, really steady, because I just want to take a really good shot. And so I was really nervous, and I finally was able to get my nerves down after watching him for about 5 minutes. And he would take a couple steps and take a couple bites, and he finally provided me a broadside shot, and I took it, and it was one shot, and he didn't make it much more than 15 yards, and he hit the ground and never got up, which made me really happy, because I always want an animal to go down really fast and it to be a quick kill. So it was a good ethical shot, and I was so excited when he went down. And then I went to the road and ended up walking for a little bit, flagged down my husband, and they came over with the kids. He drove over with the kids, and then we all walked out there together and began the process of harvesting that animal, which, oh man, it's just so fun with the kids. They crack me up. They're really interested in it, and they are not bothered at all by the blood and guts. So
that's
they're
great.
right up in there with it. Yeah. So that was the antelope this year. So it was my second antelope that I've harvested, and they do taste delicious. So we were processing most of today, and we're probably going to finish tomorrow because we're kind of exhausted.
I bet. How typically, how long does it take to process the pronghorn meat? Is it longer than most?
Yeah,
is it longer than deer?
No, it wouldn't normally take that long. My husband also filled a tag, so we have two, which I think is what led to it just taking a long time. It's just getting all of that off the bones and just divvying everything up to this is going to be for burger and this is going to be for steaks, and these are best for roast. And so it's just tiring on your hands too, because the meat's really cold, and so just handling all that cold meat is just, I don't know, makes my hands achy.
Understandable.
But
I felt that way when Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, today my husband has done almost all of the work, so really I can't complain. But I know he's getting tired, so that's why we're taking a break now. I'm going to finish up tomorrow, but we probably could have finished one today.
How important is it to involve your kids in the process this really early in their lives? Obviously, you said they don't have an aversion to seeing blood or the meat, so you think they're going to take an interest down the road too?
I would love it if they did. If they didn't, that would be really sad because it's something we do together. But I think they will. They both seem very interested, and I think it's important because they know where their meat comes from. We don't just eat our game meat. I love game meat, but I also really love cows. Oh man, I think cows are just the most amazing creatures to eat. and so it's they know where all their meat comes from. They understand it, and they understand the value of life. I'm pretty sure that that's something we're teaching them too, that, even when we go out there to harvest the animal, sometimes Lane, our little boy, he's like poking the antelope with a stick or something. And I'm like, Lane, stop. You need to respect this, okay? This antelope is feeding our family, okay? Be nice to the antelope. So we talk about that. So they take it, I think, pretty seriously. They understand. And we talk about, this antelope went to heaven, but we are so thankful that, God blessed us with this meal. And so we talk about it all. And I think it's an important lesson for them to learn early on.
Yeah, so they won't be disturbed to know that meat does not come from a grocery store. It actually comes from the field or from a farm, depending upon what you're eating. They're not going to be scarred for life. They're going to be aware.
They are aware. And they ask all the time, too, even with, chicken, if we're having chicken one night. So how did we get this chicken? I'm like, well, we did not shoot this chicken. It came from a farm. But, yeah, they are very inquisitive on that. And, they love it.
I want to actually ask you something as a former journalist, your kind of view on this. Why do you think when it comes to conservation stories, whether it's about hunting or other niche areas or about kind of your backyard, the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, somewhat to say, how come people get that wrong? And why is the coverage, you would think, so negative about hunters for the most part? Why is there this misunderstanding about hunting in the Mountain West, about conservation, management practices, if you're comfortable sharing that? But why do you think as a former journalist, so many people just don't know how to cover the beat well?
Yeah, I think people probably don't know how to cover the beat well if they don't understand the issue. And so maybe some people feel like hunting is a cruel thing, and so they come at it with that mindset. Myself, obviously, that's not my mindset. I did a lot of stories on hunting when we were in Alaska, but I even got kind of shut down on some issues there that, either our news director didn't feel like it was a newsworthy story, or I did this long series actually on bear hunting, black bear hunting, and we aired it, and then there was some footage of bears being shot because it was a hunting story, and I got it from a hunting guide. He provided me with some of that footage for my video, and we got a ton of complaints from people that were watching the news. And so I think there's viewers who don't like it, and then there might be people in the news who don't like it, and the people working in the news themselves. And so I think it kind of does lead to, doesn't always get maybe the coverage it should. And I don't think that's on anyone's part, trying to, like anyone's out to cover hunting poorly. I just think that, if you have a newsroom full of people who have never hunted in their life, they're probably not going to come up with pitches about hunting. And where else are they going to get the idea to do these stories? So they kind of get missed. And if they end up doing them, they might come at them with a, this is hurtful to the animals, or this is bad, and this is, I just think that kind of happens, and it's not, and I don't want to say so intentional. It's just kind of the way that's how I've seen it, at least.
That's certainly one view about it, because I remember in recent years we see kind of unlikely sources now talking about the need for replenishing hunters. I think NPR wrote a great piece about that, oddly enough, and some other outlets that have started to have to force themselves to cover this and acknowledge that, oh, wow, like guns and ammo collected from hunting licenses and all these other monies goes back to conservation, and they're forced to cover it because they're like, oh my gosh, we didn't realize this connection, and we have to cover it to be fair, or at least to understand. So maybe there's a little bit of optimism, but certainly they love to latch on to topics like the controversial species. The gray wolf certainly is going to be a very hot button issue going forward. I know in Montana it's a pretty hot button issue. We don't have to go into it, but that certainly is one of the more misunderstood type of hunts out there for management reasons. And even I think it triggers even more alarm than bear hunts, in my kind of estimation about it. But I think a lot of people in journalism, especially in the Acela corridor, I've seen this, they just have no proximity to the issue. they may have a misunderstanding of, let's say, the Endangered Species Act and what happens when species get recovered. If it's something not even as like big as like an apex predator from out west or a bear, they have a horrible misunderstanding of like deer hunting, and they need to manage those, or sometimes even like running dogs, not necessarily hunting with dogs, but even like sporting dog contests when you're trying to like train them, and people are like, how dare you like hook up a husky or a dog on a tether and train them and put them out in the cold. That's something crazy that animal rights activists have gone after, kind of relating to hunting. These are like highly specialized dogs that are used for hunting or mushing or something of that nature. But it seems like it just depends on the region where the reporters are. If they're more national, they really don't have much attention to detail, or they're really biased against hunting or some sort of management form of culling effort. So I think it just depends on the region. I have seen a few journalists. There's one local gal in Oklahoma who loves hunting, and she gets great engagement and traction. And she explains things like, hey, these monies go back to conservation. This is not done in vain. I eat all the meat that I get. And it's really nice to see that a few local journalists across the country are starting to do that. But I think national journalists are a little far removed, except for those who may have some curiosity about the issue.
For sure. I definitely think it's that being removed and then coming at it with a negative mindset. And it's just because they just aren't really familiar with it. You know, I wasn't familiar with hunting either before I got to Minnesota. Actually, I went out and got footage with my husband, but now at that time we were just dating, and I got a video of him deer hunting, and I was learning a lot about it, but I didn't know anything about it beforehand. So I just think people, a lot of the reporters that I've run into, I mean, I'm trying to think if I even know any other reporters that hunt, and I've worked in multiple markets, and I can't think of anybody right now. If I think of somebody later, I'll text you so you can update the podcast, but like, I really can't think of anybody. So being the only one, I mean, I just thought of one, but we didn't work there at the same time, but I just thought of one other gal. Okay. But so like one person, and I've worked in, 3 to 4 different media markets, which is a lot to not have anybody, only one other person that I know that hunts. So yeah. And then predator too, like you talked about with wolves, people just, don't really understand predator management, and they just think that these animals shouldn't be shot, and that everything will just be kumbaya in nature, and it is not. And they take down so many other animals in the forest, and that's why we need management. So you can't just let one species be untouched, because that just creates huge imbalances, and we keep seeing that across the country. So yeah.
We do. A lot of disruption to the landscape. And I think it's also bad for the wolves or bears if they're not managed too. I mean, people forget that they compete with other packs, other individuals in their species. And the really aggressive ones can rain terror onto the other ones that are weaker. And so you see biologists' assessment, and they'll tell you that too. I know a lot of the people in Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, especially when they cover these species. And I have no doubt when it comes to the gray wolf, especially in the Northwoods in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan, where I just was at, they have to monitor the wolves very closely. They watch their breeding habits. And I think that's where most of the herd in the United States is, kind of in your state, and then a little bit in the Great Lakes region. That's where they've been able to be successfully recovered and to thrive and grow. And so they study them, and you see people who study them closely say like, yeah, there has to be some management. And if there isn't, it's kind of chaotic.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, animals, they are definitely, nature can be really ugly. And yeah, like you mentioned, they have their territories, and bears, they have a really wide territory. I want to say it's like 5 miles that they cover, and grizzly bears, and they kill other, cubs. They kill, that's why sows are so defensive, because they're trying to protect their cubs. And when a boar grizzly bear has a territory, he's going to kill anybody in that area. And that doesn't matter if he mated with that sow early in the year and those are his offspring, he will kill them. Like, it is ugly out there if there's not management. It's nature and it's not pretty.
Right. And you kind of handle these issues in your current job, and we won't go into specifics. I know you want to kind of keep certain things to yourself about what you do in your day-to-day job, but you work somewhat in government, you do digital. So how do you segue from journalism into your current job? And you do handle a little bit of this conservation portfolio as well. So how does that factor in, and what do you like about your new job now, or your current job, I should say?
My current job. I mean, I am so blessed to have this job. It's, really similar to when I was in news and I was telling stories, but now I'm just on the government side. And so I'm working on telling stories specific to legislation, like how does this bill affect Bob and Joe that live in this town? And I interview them and get to share their story about how this bill will affect them or already does affect them, or when it comes to like these game management issues, how it affects them, and how like a specific example would be with the grizzly bears and trying to get them off the endangered species list so that we can have management of these bears that are just wreaking havoc on ranchers' land and on their livestock. And even just for backpackers and anybody going out in the outdoors, it's very dangerous in Montana because we have so many grizzly bears. And so that's what I get to do. I tell these stories in videos and we put those out, and they're about like a minute and a half long. And it's kind of like when I was reporting. And so I don't do anything scripted. I go out and just grab an interview with someone, and then I turn around and share their story. And I love doing it. And I think a lot of the stories that I'm sharing are ones that might not be getting the same coverage in the news. And that's what I really, really like, is that these are still stories that matter to folks. And now they're being told.
And it's for the greater good kind of the realm that you're in, especially like constituent services or people kind of knowing what's happening in Montana. Certainly you do deal a lot in Montana with your line of work. And what is so special about Montana, you would say to those outside of Montana? I got to see it first time. I'm familiar with the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, having been to Wyoming and Idaho before, but I've never gone to Montana up until this summer, and I loved it. And I was like, I need to come back. This is so great. But what is your pitch what is your Montana pitch, I would say, to those outside of Montana, and why it's so special?
Oh, Montana is really amazing. I love that they're so vast. It is a huge state, and there is road access to so many different places. So you can just get all over this state. I mean, it'll take you like 9 hours to drive from one corner to the other, but if not longer, but you can get there. And so there's tons of fishing opportunity, hunting opportunity. There's just beautiful stories of generational ranches, people that have been working the land. And I love that. I love ag. I love ag stories. That's definitely like a top thing for me to cover in the videos that I work. These are just people who really care about family, care about each other, care about their work. I think that a lot of times folks in ag might get a bad rap that they are just in their bottom line. But really these folks, they don't just see these cows as, dollar symbols walking across the pasture. They tenderly care for these calves, each one of them that are born in the middle of the night, going out there and getting them and helping, the cows give birth, and just all of it. It's just amazing to see the kind of people, the hard work in this state. And it's so big. And I love Montana. It's really great.
It is a beautiful state. They call it the treasure state for a reason. It is immaculate. it has its problems, because of different conditions that are not really in the state's control. You guys suffer from wildfires, but you guys, I think, have a good handle of that, better than some other states. And you certainly have to deal with the elements during winter, and you have kind of these animal rights activists moving into Montana and other interests trying to change Montana from what it is and what's made it stand out. But I think people still love the charm about Montana, from the Western expansion days, Wild West, kind of that rugged individualism that you find there. And hopefully you guys are working to keep it that way as well.
Oh, for sure. I definitely hope that we can keep it that way. And I say that as somebody who's moved here. I didn't grow up here, but I love everything that Montana stands for, and I want it to stay that way. I don't want to change it. I'm not here to change it. I'm here for it.
Certainly.
So that's something that my family appreciates for sure.
What are some tips that you have for new hunters, especially women, who are possibly picking up the sport? Someone is listening. They love hearing about your pronghorn antelope hunt, and maybe they'll see some of your other hunts if they connect with you. What is your tips to people everyone included, especially women who want to pick up hunting? Is it difficult? What steps do you recommend as being someone who was new to the sport yourself?
Yeah, I think that gaining confidence is definitely is something that takes time, and getting connected with somebody who's really going to teach you. And, for me, that was my husband, and he has taught me so much. But I did do a women's hunting seminar a couple of years ago. And it was really cool, put on by this great gal here in Bozeman who really advocates for women hunters. And it was a really smart thing for her to do, to put on this women's seminar, because it was women asking questions about hunting in front of other women. So you just don't maybe feel as silly as if you are in front of a bunch of guys who know it all or something. So it was a really good environment to ask questions and connect with other women who you could chat with later. And I thought that was really great. And I think that really pushed me out of my comfort zone to start connecting with other gals, and really, it just really pushed me to another level. Talking with other women, I think was really helpful. It also made me realize I do know a lot. And I just think so many times that when you're with your husband or somebody who's more experienced, you don't realize how much you know, because you're kind of relying on them a lot. And then when I was in an environment where I didn't have, my husband next to me, I really had to rely on myself and realize, actually, I do know a good amount. And then for me, solo hunting has been the thing that's taught me the most. I feel like when we were in Alaska and just any other hunting we did, we was always together. And since we have been in Montana, we don't have anybody to watch our kids. So usually we have to go out one at a time. And so my husband stays with the kids, or I stay with the kids while he goes out, whether that's first thing in the morning or later in the day or whatnot. But being by myself, I had to make a lot of decisions on my own. And that has taught me a lot. And there was a lot of mistakes made. I've blown my cover, I've been winded, and all of that, it just made me a better hunter and made me a lot more confident. And now I can go out all by myself and, harvest an animal, and I feel comfortable that I'm going to make a good shot and I'm going to make good decisions. And, even if I would have made some bad choices on this antelope hunt and maybe got my cover blown and they would have spotted me, I would have learned something. But, thankfully I didn't, but being out there by yourself really teaches you a lot. So I'd say connecting with people who are probably maybe at the same level as you, or even just a little bit advanced than you, but away from somebody that's your main comfort source. That's really important. And then getting out there on your own and starting to learn and just be really, really safe and really take your time. It took me a long time before I started going out solo hunting. My husband and I have been hunting together since we met, and we met in 2012. Yeah. And so I'd say I've been hunting since about 2012, and I only started being confident enough to go out on my own since we moved to Montana. So just the past couple of years. And now I've harvested a lot of different animals, but I would say that it's my confidence level that's gone up a lot.
I'd say those are great tips because, there's a lot of programs now appealing to women hunters who have all experience levels. And I haven't taken up Becoming the Outdoors Women course. I've actually largely been mentored by guys, and that's a good thing because I can hang along with the boys too. But I have gone hunting with women on several occasions, so it's more so like I can branch out and do trips with women, and that's easy, and I'm usually the least experienced one. But when it comes to like the proper mentorship and coaching, it's been easier to go with men in Virginia because all my female friends that live in Virginia, they're far, far south from me, or they're like 2-3 hours away. So I'll go with people that are like within an hour and a half or so. But it's just been easier to go with men because they offer the trips and they're like mentors to me professionally in other capacities too. So they're just like, it's available, come hunting with us. And I'm like, okay, cool, I'll go do that. Or if I've gone out of state to do that. So for me, in my about, I would say going into end of 4 years, going into the 5th year of hunting, I've found that to be the case for me. And I'm not ready to do solo hunts yet. I'm still like, I need to get a little bit more under my belt. But I'm hoping within the next coming years, I'll be able to have the confidence myself to do it-yourself hunts as well. But it's a little trickier kind of in a more populated state. Maybe Montana, you can roam a little more freely. There's a lot more public land. And for me, I'm just like a little nervous to do that. But I'll get the confidence at some point. But I'm glad that you've had a good experience being able to do it on your own too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been fun. It's definitely getting my confidence up. I think you can have all of the knowledge, which is, I guess, maybe that's how I could word it too. It's like I had a lot of knowledge beforehand, but I didn't have that confidence factor. And now that I have that, it's like, oh, actually, I do know a lot about, we have been hunting for a really long time, and I actually do know a good amount. Still, there's a ton that I could learn, and I know that I'm nowhere near the experience level of my husband, who's been hunting his entire life. And I think he's an amazing hunter. I know he is. He's really great. And so I'm not there yet, but I've gained a lot of confidence having some success in the past few years. So that's been awesome.
Very encouraging and very inspiring. So Mallory, if people want to connect with you, where do you recommend that they follow you or connect with you to learn more about your work or see some of your hunts?
Let's see.
I'm not sending people.
Well, I have Instagram, and that's where I post most of my stuff. My Instagram is private, so that you'd have to ask to follow me there. And then I don't use Facebook anymore, so I guess the only place would be Instagram, and that's really it. I'm always down to meet new hunters, so I guess if there was a gal, in the Bozeman area that wanted to connect, they could message me, because that would probably be the best thing. Gosh, sorry, I feel really stumbly. I don't have a big social media presence. I'm actually somewhat low key on that end. I guess after I got out of news where everything was public, then now I've made everything private. And so, I have a very limited number of, people who I follow. So, but I'm always down to connect with other gals or chat. So if they just message me, Mallory Walser, on Instagram, then that would be how you find me.
Beautiful. We'll include your Instagram account. And no, I understand that people kind of want that little privacy nowadays, and it's totally commendable and respectable to do that. So no, you won't get any weirdos from me your way. But we'll be sure to have people connect. I have no doubt there are lots of women in the Mountain West, and I can think of someone. I think she just moved to Montana. She seems like a nice gal. I'll connect you with her. And she does a lot of hunting. She's from Missouri, I think, originally. But I was like, oh, my gosh, there are people in there. And, you probably need more friends. They probably need more friends. I'm happy to make introductions for you to other people as well. But, Mallory, it's been so much fun having you come on the podcast. I know you're used to interviewing. Now you're kind of in the opposite position to do that. And it's always good to catch up. And I hope I get to see you again very, very soon. And it was good that you kind of brought Madison under your wing, too, when she was in Bozeman area.
Yes, it was really great meeting her and getting to meet you face to face, even though we had already chatted. So I would love for you to come out here again, and it would be really fun if we got to do a hunt together. So I've always down to do a girls hunt.
That would be so much fun. Maybe in a few years' time when I get more confidence to public land hunt out west, but maybe the next time I come to Montana in Livingston or someplace like that, it won't be raining like the first time we all hung out in bed.
Yeah, there can be some miserable weather, which sometimes is really good for hunting.
All right, Mallory, thank you so much for joining the podcast. Take care and good luck with the rest of your hunting season.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the show. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you're following us on your preferred podcast player. We like to recommend Apple Podcasts because Apple is where most of our listenership hails from. So if you head over to Apple, subscribe, comb through some episodes, and leave us reviews, we'd be more than appreciative of your support in that manner. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to never miss a beat nor a guest announcement. And you can connect with me personally on my social media feeds. All of the Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram links that I have are all denoted by blue check marks. Really easy to find me, so engage with me there. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you want to recommend yourself for the show as a prospective guest, I'm all ears to hear and sift through different inquiries. I get a lot of requests, and my schedule is also quite busy, so you'll see guests come from me, but like I said, I'm always open to different guests coming on the show.